What's up, guys? Welcome to another South African true crime video. I am Pam Ready, and if you have not already, please make sure to subscribe so that you can catch the videos as soon as they are uploaded. Thank you so much if you have already. Today I'm going to be talking about the Lekita Moore case, and listen, all I'm saying is brace yourself because it's just wild. Let's get right into it. Lekita was just 18 years old when she was found in an open field in Noord-Gedacht in Cape Town, and she was found with her body mutilated, slashed and stabbed, and just left in an open field close to an informal settlement where literally kids could just run by, you know, playing around and come across her body. Whoever did this to her was vicious about it, was super angry, and had no mercy. But before I jump ahead of myself, let's start at the beginning. Lekita grew up in Valhalla Park in Cape Town. Unfortunately, the area where she lived in was very high on drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and gangsterism. Unfortunately, this was common in the area. However, even though it was common, it was still home to many people. She was a daughter to Shireen and Charles Moore, and she had a sister by the name of Mercia. Lekita was only 18 years old at the time of her death. She was part of a very loving family, and they seemed very close-knit. Lekita was described to be vibey. She had a very active social life. She had a zest for life. She loved having fun, and she was also described to be a soft person, really causing no harm and, you know, just living it up and having a good time as a young woman. Fast forward to the 10th of September 2016, where Lekita would attend a karaoke party, and at this karaoke party there happened to be an altercation that went on whereby this particular male had a problem, or seemed to have had a problem with Lekita for some reason. Unfortunately, there's not much detail or information about what the issue was, but what happened was, at the party, she ended up being punched in the face, you know, until she bled through her nose. And this is according to an eyewitness who was within Lekita's circle and chilling with her that night. Then fast forward to the 11th of September 2016, and this would be the morning or the day that Lekita's naked body was found in an open field. So what in the world happened? According to an eyewitness who did not want to be identified, Lekita had left with two males identified to be Cameron Wilson and Xavier Bester. Now, this particular eyewitness had also mentioned that Lekita had warned her about going to the bathrooms on her own because there were gangsters that also attended this party. So it was just not a good idea and not a very safe idea to go to the bathrooms on your own as a lady, as a girl. But get this, okay? Lekita's body was found on the 11th of September, and just 17 hours later, 17 hours later, Xavier Bester's body was found just 20 meters away from Lekita's body. Now I'm just like, what? Which leaves Cameron Wilson as the only survivor of that night. And because he was the only survivor of that night, and he was last seen with both victims who were now dead, he was arrested not long after Lekita's body was found. It was found that Xavier was shot twice in the head and just also left on that field, which was close by to an informal settlement where people lived and could just walk by and see these bodies. Xavier Bester was only 20 years old at the time, and he lived with his mom and younger sister. It was said that Xavier spent most of his time at his grandmother's house and didn't get up to any kind of nonsense. He was not a gangster, says his gran, and he had dropped out of school after grade 6 because he had some sort of learning disability, if I'm not mistaken. Cameron Wilson, the now accused and prime suspect, was only 19 years old at the time in 2016. He is son to Bridget and Abraham Wilson. Cameron was very well known in his community, and this is the community of Hines Park in Cape Town. Now, when Lekita's case broke out, it was found that Cameron was actually out on bail. He was out on bail for a previous murder. So it's not unbelievable or far-fetched to assume that he could have possibly been behind Lekita's murder. It was found out that he had a history of crime and that he actually was a terror to his community. Now, it turned out that he was a big bad bully who, instead of taking or snatching your lunch money, he would take your life instead. And he was described to have gone on a killing spree between the years 2014 and 2016. In October 2014, Alfonso van Rooyen was stabbed in the chest by Cameron Wilson. Another individual by the name of Toyha Stober had witnessed this attack. Toyha, the witness, had rushed and notified Alfonso's stepdad, and they both rushed back to the scene where Alfonso was stabbed, and they tried getting him into the car as quickly as possible to rush him to hospital, but unfortunately Alfonso did not make it. He died on the way to the hospital. Just 3 days later, after Alfonso's death, Toyha, the witness that ran for Alfonso's dad to let him know that he was stabbed, was gunned down just 3 days later after Alfonso's death, because it was testified and it was found out that on the day of Alfonso's death, Toyha had pointed Cameron out to Alfonso's stepdad, Donovan Morrison, telling him that, hey, this is the guy who stabbed your stepson. And then, of course, 3 days later, conveniently, Toyha was gunned down and killed. And Donovan, Alfonso's stepdad, had testified in court, revealing this information. In December of 2014, Ernest Erasmus was stabbed by Cameron Wilson over a 20 Rand note. Cameron had approached Ernest and his girlfriend Crystalline and started demanding stuff from him. And because Ernest was not giving in to his demands, he just stabbed him. And whilst being stabbed, Ernest yelled for his girlfriend Crystalline to run away into a nearby neighbor's house for safety. And the most crushing part is that when detectives and Crystalline identified his body at the morgue, they found the 20 rand note. They found that it was still in his pocket. So he died for nothing. And Crystalline, Ernest's girlfriend, had testified in court against Cameron. In April 2015, Cody Philander was stabbed by Cameron over his own bike, but thankfully Cody survived this attack. Another incident in April of 2015, Stacy Lee Mohale and Abigail Blykes were on their way going home from another friend that they had visited when two boys approached them on the way. One of the boys, you guessed it, was Cameron, and another was a minor, a boy much younger than Cameron, maybe around 12, 13 years old at the time. Cameron bullied them and tried to start some mess with them, and when they tried to leave, Cameron threatened them with a gun. Cameron led them to a nearby field and he proceeded to rape Stacy in that field. He then asked both girls, Stacy Lee and Abigail, to lay on this random old mattress where he threw stones at them, he taunted them, and he also bullied this younger boy who was with him to throw stones at them as well. If not, then he would kill all of them. So he also had this habit of getting other people to do the dirty work for them. And he then threw tires on the two girls and set them alight. Like, I cannot make this up. He set them alight and just left them for dead. However, Abigail survived the attack and she was the one to testify in court against Cameron. And then again in April of 2015, this boy, Donnie Davids, was grabbed by Cameron Wilson. She had stopped to talk to a friend, catching up, minding her own business, when Cameron grabbed her and forced her into a nearby field where he raped her. Like, what is wrong with this boy? What is wrong with him? Not only that, but again, this tactic of his, he forced her friend, Donnie's friend, to kick her. What is this child's problem? Thankfully, Donnie survived and she was able to testify in court against Cameron. Now, you may be thinking, so, okay, fine, Cameron had committed all these crimes, but what proves that he was actually involved with Lekita this time, since Xavier can't testify because he died and Lekita was also killed. So literally Cameron is the only one who can tell us what happened at that point when it was just the three of them. Well, DNA was found on Cameron's jacket belonging to Lekita Moore and another female, which makes me think, okay, so what else happened on that day? And some blood was found on his jacket as well, belonging to Lekita Moore. Then comes September 2016, okay? Rosalind Lekay had seen two men assaulting a woman, and this was around 1 o'clock in the morning, okay? She saw two men. She was just minding her own business, standing by her door. She saw two men assaulting a woman. She runs to intervene, only for her to get stabbed in the neck and have a rock or a brick thrown at her. And another friend also sees this and comes to her rescue, right? But when he comes to her rescue, the two males run away. And then at 5 o'clock that morning, Lekita's body was found, which I believe she witnessed Lekita, Xavier, and Cameron. Now, Cameron pled not guilty on all these charges. Now, I don't know about you, but this many people, this many testimonies cannot be all false. Like, they all have the same theme, and the theme is Cameron Wilson. Now, this is what happened according to Cameron. According to Cameron, Xavier killed Lekita. He said that Lekita and Xavier were arguing at the party, and things escalated, and Xavier ended up punching her in the face to the point where she bled through her nose. And then they had decided, a group of them had decided to leave the party, and when they split, it so happened that Lekita, Xavier, and Cameron had left together, going in the same direction, going home together. Now, they were still arguing, according to Cameron. Lekita and Xavier were still arguing, and she threatened to go to the police because he had assaulted her. Now, at this point, Cameron said that Xavier got so mad that he started stabbing her. He stabbed her so viciously that she dropped to the floor, and he just went on and on and on, stabbing her, whilst Cameron just stood back and watched. He just watched, I guess. After some time, when I guess he couldn't take it anymore, he pulled Xavier away from Lekita, and then he started fearing for his life because he knew that he would be blamed for the murder since Xavier was now dead. But I still have a few questions though, right? I'm not gonna lie, it is very hard for me to believe this story. Like, his track record speaks for itself. First of all, it's very convenient that Xavier is now dead. When people heard of his death, residents thought that, you know what, Xavier was killed by Cameron because he was a witness to Lekita's murder. And who's to say that Cameron did not, you know, bully Xavier into stabbing Lekita? Because the pattern is there. He had a habit of pressuring whoever he was with to abuse and assault his victim. He did this with his own cousin, where he asked his cousin, ask is such a polite way of putting it. He forced his cousin to kick his own girlfriend. And with Stacy Lee and Abigail, he forced this child who was with him to throw rocks at them. Who's to say that this time he didn't ask Xavier, ask is so polite, he didn't force Xavier to assault Lekita, which I honestly don't think was the case. I mean, it's possible, but I do think that Cameron himself probably stabbed Lekita to death because of the altercation and the eyewitness account of him being jealous or, you know, being upset with Lekita for whatever reason. And he seemed to have had a temper when he didn't get things his way. And get this, Lekita was stabbed 98 times. 98 times. 98 times. Lekita was stabbed in her head, neck, chest, abdomen, in her back, and on her private parts. And they described her body to be mutilated, like her lady parts was slashed, her face was slashed, her breasts were slashed, her private parts was slashed. This was such a vicious attack. And the stab wounds on her back indicated that she may have tried to escape and was probably dragged and stabbed in her back. Cameron's trial lasted 51 days, and he had to be evaluated by a psychologist, and he was deemed a psychopath. And when I tell you that this boy had no care in the world, he was giggling in court, he found things to be funny, especially when the witnesses were testifying. He would roll his eyes, he was just chilling and could not care less. If no remorse was a person, there were. The defense argued that the lack of blood on his clothes should prove that he was just a bystander. His clothes had splatters in comparison to being submerged in blood, since this would have been a very bloody scene. The defense also argued and said to consider his upbringing. I can't even begin to describe how weak that argument is, because first of all, there is murder on both sides of the spectrum. We know of murders that are committed in suburbs and like these high class areas, as well as areas that are drug infested with alcohol abuse and gangsterism. I feel like that is such a weak argument, because not everybody in areas where there's high levels of gangsterism is a murderer. At the end of the day, it is a choice. Nobody is forcing Cameron to go around killing people for fun. Sure, it does play a role, it does have some sort of influence, but to lean on that argument is just unacceptable, because then how do you explain murders that happen in suburban areas or areas of high class? Not everyone in the area of Hines Park is a murderer. It's just, it's not an excuse. And even with the argument about, you know, not having enough blood on his clothes, like they specifically mentioned that his shoes and jeans had no blood, but then Cameron also mentioned, well, according to his version, that Xavier went on to wash his hands after Lekita's murder. Who's to say that he did not wash off the blood from him? And also, nobody has spoken about whether there was that amount of blood on Xavier's body. If he was the killer, surely they would have mentioned that his corpse or the clothes that he was wearing on that day was full of blood if he was the killer, right? So finally the trial was coming to a close, and it was time to find out exactly what kind of sentence Cameron was going to be receiving for this murder and murders prior to Lekita. And also Cameron's story changed a few times. Okay, first he said that he had no interaction with Lekita, that he did not see her that night. And I think there's even a version where he said that he wasn't even at the karaoke party, but this is a lie because there are eyewitnesses. People saw him there. Okay, first he said he wasn't at the party, and then he says he didn't speak to Lekita or see Lekita at the party. And then he said that when he left to go home, he went straight to his grandmother's house. Okay, then his story changed again, and he said that no, actually he was with Lekita and they had left together with Xavier, but he didn't kill Lekita. Xavier killed Lekita. So there were a lot of inconsistencies, like he didn't know whether he was coming or going. Was he with Lekita? Was he not with Lekita? So his entire testimony was just rejected by the judge and considered a lie. Cameron was sentenced to 4 life sentences plus 71 years to run and serve concurrently. This boy just got no respect. He has no respect for the law or for women or for people. When the judge gave him his sentence, he clapped. I mean, you just have to see this for yourself.
Cruel and remorseless. Words repeated several times by Judge Chantal Fortuin in handing down sentence. She says the scenes of 20-year-old Wilson's crimes were gruesome, and that he has left permanent emotional scars on his victims and their families. But Fortuin had praise for witnesses who had to overcome immense fear to testify in court, helping to serve justice. Throughout sentencing, Wilson seemed undeterred. Moore's family has welcomed the sentence.
Not only that, it is said that he would taunt the families that were in the gallery, you know, coming to witness this trial. And he even went as far as saying, well, at least I'm still alive. This is the sentence that was given to him, okay? Brace yourself. 4 life terms for the murders of Toya Stober, Stacey Lee Mohale, Lekita Moore, and the rape of Donnie Davids. 15 years for the murder of Alfonso van Rooyen. 5 years for the possession of an unlicensed gun and ammunition. 15 years for Ernest Erasmus. 10 years for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit a crime. 6 years for assault and the intent to do bodily harm. 10 years for the murder of Rosalind Lekay. He will only be eligible for parole after 25 years. That's if he is even granted this opportunity, because he was deemed a psychopath where he showed no empathy, no remorse whatsoever by the psychologists who evaluated him for the 51-day trial. And it was said that he can't even be rehabilitated, because if he had to come out on parole, he will most probably re-offend, since he just does not care.
He's a psychopath, he's a serial killer, with very limited chances of being rehabilitated. That's what the court said and the psychologist said. And he didn't show any remorse.
Wilson's sentences will run concurrently. Mariska Botha, SABC News, Cape Town.
This case had 40 witnesses testifying against Cameron. Yeah, 40. And when I thought about it, it makes sense because he just did things out in the open. He didn't really care. And a point that his lawyer made, which I could agree with, besides the other things that he spoke about, the link to that interview with Cameron's lawyer is down in my description box. He made a point that Cameron had a goal for people to fear him, where people would fight for, the respect of others. He wanted to be feared because he probably wanted to impress his father, who, by the way, was also on trial for a triple murder, because his dad was allegedly one of the gang leaders, the 28th gang leaders. So that's that. I mean, just the cream of the crop. So because Cameron was just so careless with his crimes, there were witnesses left, right, and center who came up to testify against him, and the judge even commended a lot of them, because especially his rape victims, or the victims that survived, were very scared and they were threatened, for testifying, but they did it anyway because the community was just so tired of gangsters like Cameron just taking the lives of their children. And with regards to Lekita's parents, like Charles, Lekita's dad, said he will definitely not forgive Cameron for what he did.
I feel a little bit better, but I still got that pain because I never gonna get my child back. Because every time I come at home and I watch my child's photo, then I start crying.
Moore says he cannot forgive Wilson.
How you can forgive a guy like that? You think nothing about other people's life. That's why the judge said last time. You think nothing about women.
Like, they'll never get to see their daughter again, who loved life, who was such a happy young lady. They will never get to see her again and hear her laugh or anything of that sort. And Charles actually said that they hoped that he would get the death penalty, but because that is not something that we do in South Africa anymore, he gets life instead. And Lekita's mom, Shireen, had a complete breakdown, that she couldn't even attend court, and she was unfortunately hooked on a drug called tick, so she had to be put into a rehab center just to deal with the death of her daughter, which is absolutely crushing. And like, Cameron showed absolutely no remorse whatsoever, and the judge even went as far as saying that Cameron had no respect for Lekita while she was alive, and he couldn't even extend any sort of respect even after her death, because even in her death he humiliated her and left her on a plain open field for anybody to just come by and discover. He didn't even bother to bury her in a shallow grave just to, hide her body from passerbys or just give her some sort of respect. And the judge really took that into consideration, that he just did not care whatsoever. He joined the 28th gang in prison and had a tattoo, to show that off. But thankfully he will not be around, and the community is glad that he has served he got the sentence that he deserved, which is life. I mean, 4 lifetimes plus 71 years. So Lekita's family, as well as all the other victims' families, are very grateful for that he won't be around to taunt and terrorize the community any longer. Anyway, guys, that is the Lekita Moore / Cameron Wilson case. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. I'm just dumbfounded by this young person. Like, I can't even deal. And just like that, he ended his life, even though he probably doesn't even care, and ended the lives of many other young people. So that's it, guys. That is the Lekita Moore case. I will see you in my next video. Please subscribe, like and share, and I will see you next time. Cheers.